This may seem like a little bit of a strange topic to talk about on a drumsticks everywhere. To talk about on a drumming channel, and it was actually requested by one of you, and that's kind of it got me thinking about it, and I think about it a lot anyway. And that's the subject of ego as it pertains to this instrument and our development on this instrument and its role in there. I always go through life assuming that a few things will continue to grow, like my nose, my fingernails, and my ego, and the less I can feed that ego, the better, right? But it's a sensitive subject because we don't oftentimes like to admit that ego is involved with things. So let's just kind of break out some different ways that ego can get in the way. Let's start with the practice room. Ego can get in the way whenever we are labeling it as practice, but really, we're just kind of showing off some chops for ourselves and we're just playing around. Nothing wrong with that. You want to jam? That's great. But don't call it practice whenever we're kind of soothing our ego. Maybe we've seen a video that made us feel a little bad about ourselves. So we're going to jump in the practice room, play all of the licks that we know, and we feel a little better about ourselves, and our ego has been, soothed for that moment. Ego has to do in the practice room with not being able to really look at something and understand that the reason we're not getting better is because, let's take technique. You hear me talk about it a lot. Our technique is bad. And our ego gets in the way and say, no, it's not that technique. I'm too good for that. I'm way past studying that technique. I'm way past. There's something to be said for the beginner's mind. Keeping an open mind to learn. And no matter what the issue is, to be able to, okay, we'll tear that apart and we'll just rebuild it from there. But oftentimes, ego gets in the way. And we spend years doing things how we know is improper when we should go back, and the quickest way to get there is to actually go back. Because of our ego, we don't want to, because that would feel like going backwards, and we don't like that, right? So ego can get in the way of the practice room. Ego can get in the way on the gig. You go in, you think you're the hottest thing in town, and that comes across in your playing. That can really affect you getting gigs. Ego can get in the way whenever you feel like you've become too big and too in demand, and now you can take and pick and choose and treat the gig however you want to. That happened to me in college. I had a gig that I treated, it wasn't even bad. I just got a sub, and I just felt like, I could get that sub because I had all these options, and both gigs turned out fine, but I never got called by that person again for another gig because of the way I treated that gig, and it was really just boiled down to ego. I thought I could do what I wanted to do with replacing whoever I wanted to because they would always call, and that's just not the case. Ego can get in the way whenever people try to give you constructive criticism. There's something that used to happen that doesn't happen as much anymore, and I feel it's really missing. And that's something that used to happen on bandstand called cutting, especially back in the early days of jazz. I mean, they would cut on you hard when you came on stage. Whenever I went to New Orleans on Bourbon Street for the first few months, these guys were older than me. They had been doing it a long time, and I got cut on every day. What is cutting? They were pointing out the flaws. They were pointing out, and not always in the kindest way, what was the matter with my playing, and we got to fix that now because we're on the job and you need to be up to par if you're going to be playing with us. That was the deal, right? Now, what would have happened if I would have taken all that constructive criticism, all of those looks back at me, if I would have just, gone in the corner and sucked my thumbs, and these guys suck, I don't like them, I'm not going to play with them. What would have happened? I would have never had a career. That was setting the stage for my entire career. If I would have let my ego get in the way, I'm too good to listen to them, then I never would have received a lot of knowledge. I'll give you a very simple thing. If I would have had all this ego, I was playing, and a piano player, we were on break, and he said, you play real busy. That's just kind of your thing. And then he walked off, and I thought for a second, yeah, that's just my thing. I play real busy. And then I thought, I don't think that was meant as a compliment. I think that was more like, that's just your thing. Maybe you'll outgrow that. So all of these little experiences where things were said, if I would have become very offended, if I would have wanted them to deliver it in a very PC way, we're big about that these days, I never would have gained the knowledge I gained from that if I would let my ego get in the way. We have to stop getting our feelings hurt. And we have to be willing to just lay it all on the line. When I go play a gig, I still talk to the band leader, and I'm like, hey, is there something I can do better? How can I serve you better? Really, we always want to come in a very humble way and be willing to serve the other players, to serve the music, to serve the band leader, to serve the people that you're playing for, the audience, all of those. You're in a role of service. And so if we always look at it like that and put our ego second, then we're going to do better. Now, there's a story, my college band director, whenever I was in college, and I'm remembering this from years ago, so some of the details may be a little fuzzy. But there was a benefit for the Hurricane Katrina victims that they were playing at on the coast, and I believe that maybe Macy Gray had come through, was playing, and Vinnie Colaiuta was playing with one of the artists that were playing at this benefit, and they said, hey, there's a community big band, would you sit in with it? And he said, sure. So the story, as I was told it, was they were in rehearsal, and all these guys are community. So some of them are professors, some of them are from the community that are just stellar players, and then some of them were from some of the other bands. They were, all there to help that cause. And the band director was from the community, right? And I think he was from a community college in that area. And so they were playing through this song. Vinny was back there. They're doing a rehearsal. And so he stopped, and he's adjusting maybe the saxophone section. And then he says, just off the cuff, he says, and Vinny, don't drag this time. And he looks back down, and my teacher at the time said you could almost hear the air pressure in the room drop as everyone sucked in and went, and looked back to see what was going to happen. Because he had just told Vinny, you're dragging. And you know what? Vinny didn't say anything. He just nodded his head and said, you got it. Now, whether Vinny played it exactly how he had just been playing or not, this shows that even at that level, his ego was not getting in the way, because to make a big deal about that would have been nothing. Probably his tempo was way better than that band director's. But the fact of the matter is he was humble enough to just say, you got it. And maybe he thought, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, and he did it the exact same way. Or maybe he thought, you know what, maybe I was dragging a little bit, kind of didn't get enough sleep last night. You never know, it's a million things, and I don't know, I wasn't sitting there. But the fact is that story illustrated to me, ego's a huge deal. You always have to stay humble. You always have to be willing to serve the other people first in any situation that you're sitting in on the bandstand, within the music, and in your practice time. Serve yourself. Serve yourself by being willing to take an honest look at things and not let your ego get in the way and say, you know what, that really is a problem. I really am not playing as well as I thought I was. I'm going to address that problem. I'm telling you, ego it's gotten in the way of so many things in my life, and as I go through my career and as I get older, I continue to see that ego is the thing. We have to keep it in check. It will always grow, especially if you feed it. So thank you for the topic. I really appreciate that. Sometimes you guys make comments, and it causes me to think on things for a while and really solidify what I think about, and think about times in my life where those things have happened and it's applicable. So anyway, this was requested by you guys. I think it's a great topic. Hit that thumbs up button. If it has helped you, share it with somebody that you think it may also benefit. Leave me a comment. Let me know you stopped by. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, do that. Click the button below. But whatever you do, I'll see you here in the next video.